My name is Sarah Chen, and 6 months ago, my own father looked me in the eye at my sister Emma's engagement party and said the words that still echo in my nightmares. At least one of my daughters finally made something of herself. The other one, well, we can't all be winners. The entire family erupted in laughter while I sat there, humiliated. What they didn't know was that 3 days earlier, I had just sold my company to Microsoft for $20 million. Before I tell you how I made my family's faces turn ghostly white and reduced my father to tears, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and hit that like button if you've ever been the disappointment in your family. Trust me, what happens next will show you that the sweetest revenge isn't getting even. It's proving them so spectacularly wrong that they'll never recover from the shock. Growing up, Emma was everything I wasn't. Social, charming, conventionally successful. She sailed through college with a marketing degree, landed a respectable job at a consulting firm, and was dating David, a lawyer from a good family. Meanwhile, I was the weird one who spent weekends coding instead of socializing, who chose computer science over a practical degree, who worked at a tiny startup instead of a prestigious corporation. Every family gathering was a masterclass in subtle humiliation. Emma just got promoted to senior associate, my mother would announce proudly. Then turning to me with barely concealed disappointment, and Sarah is still doing her computer thing. The way she said computer thing made it sound like a hobby rather than a career. My father was worse. A successful corporate lawyer himself, he'd introduce Emma as my daughter, the marketing executive, and me as simply my other daughter. At restaurants, he'd insist on paying Emma's bill while sliding mine across the table to me. "You're so independent," he'd say with a patronizing smile. "You probably prefer to handle this yourself." The message was crystal clear. Emma was the investment, I was the write-off. The humiliation reached its peak at Emma's engagement party 8 months ago. My parents had rented an elegant private dining room at the city's most expensive restaurant. Extended family, family friends, David's parents, everyone who mattered was there. I arrived in my best dress, carrying a thoughtful gift, genuinely happy for my sister. But from the moment I walked in, I felt the familiar sting of being treated like an afterthought. My parents had seated me at the far end of the table, next to my teenage cousin who spent the entire evening on his phone. The real blow came during my father's speech. Standing up with his champagne glass, he beamed at Emma and David. "Tonight, we celebrate not just an engagement, but the success of a young woman who has exceeded every expectation." He paused, his eyes sweeping the room. "Emma represents everything we hoped for in a daughter. Ambitious, accomplished, making us proud every single day." Then came the moment that changed everything. His gaze fell on me, and his expression shifted to something between pity and disappointment. "Of course, we love both our daughters. At least one of them finally made something of herself. The other one?" He shrugged with mock helplessness. "Well, we can't all be winners." The room erupted in uncomfortable laughter. I felt my face burn with humiliation as relatives who had known me since childhood joined in the cruel merriment. Emma looked mortified but said nothing. My mother patted my father's arm approvingly. I excused myself to the bathroom and spent 20 minutes crying in a stall, wondering how my own family could be so casually cruel. When I returned, the conversation had moved on, as if my public humiliation had been just another toast. What my family didn't know, what I had been desperately trying to tell them for years, was that their failure daughter had been quietly building something extraordinary. 5 years earlier, while Emma was climbing the corporate ladder, I had co-founded Dataflow with my MIT roommate Maria. We'd identified a massive problem. Small and medium businesses were drowning in data, but had no affordable way to analyze it for actionable insights. Working 80-hour weeks in a cramped apartment that doubled as our office, we built a revolutionary analytics platform. While my family was celebrating Emma's promotion to senior associate, I was closing our first $1 million year. While they worried about my computer hobby, we were scaling to serve 10,000 businesses nationwide. The growth was explosive. We hired 60 employees, opened offices in 3 cities, and caught the attention of major tech companies. Microsoft, Google, and Amazon all came knocking. But I kept quiet about everything. partly from humility, but mostly because every time I tried to share my excitement, my family would change the subject or make dismissive comments about tech bubbles and unstable startups. 3 days before Emma's engagement party, 3 days before my father called me a loser in front of everyone, I signed the acquisition papers. Microsoft bought Dataflow for $20 million up front, plus stock options that could double that amount based on performance metrics. I was 28 years old and financially set for life, and my family had no idea. After the engagement party humiliation, I made a decision that would define the next 6 months of my life. I would go completely no contact with my family until I could reveal the truth in the most devastating way possible. My parents' calls went unanswered. Emma's apologetic texts were ignored. When my mother showed up at my apartment, I simply didn't answer the door. To them, their failure daughter was finally living up to their expectations, disappearing into obscurity, probably nursing her wounded pride. But I was busy. The Microsoft acquisition had made me one of their youngest senior consultants. I was traveling the country, implementing data flow integrations, speaking at tech conferences, building my venture capital portfolio. My professional life was soaring, while my family assumed I was wallowing in self-pity. The irony was delicious. During those 6 months, my mother left voicemails expressing concern about my isolation. "Honey, I know Dad's words hurt, but you can't just disappear. We're family." My father's messages were more pragmatic. "Sarah, this silent treatment is childish. Adults don't run away from uncomfortable truths." Emma's messages broke my heart the most. "I know what Dad said was wrong. I should have spoken up. Please come to dinner Sunday. I miss my sister." But I held firm. The reveal had to be perfect. The opportunity came with Emma's 30th birthday dinner. My mother called from a number I didn't recognize, leaving a message that was equal parts invitation and ultimatum. "Sarah, this is Emma's milestone birthday. Whatever silly grudge you're holding needs to end. We've reserved the back room at Le Bernardin for family only. Be there at 7 p.m. next Saturday, or don't bother calling yourself our daughter anymore." Le Bernardin, the same upscale restaurant where I'd been humiliated 6 months earlier. The poetic justice was too perfect to resist. I RSVP'd through Emma, telling her I'd be there with a birthday surprise she'd never forget. She was thrilled, assuming I was finally ready to reconcile. That week, I prepared meticulously. I had 3 items printed and bound in elegant folders: the Microsoft acquisition announcement from TechCrunch, my official letter of appointment as senior technology consultant, and the Forbes 30 Under 30 feature that had just been published, highlighting my success as both entrepreneur and venture capitalist. I also prepared a very special guest. Saturday arrived. I wore my most expensive dress, a custom piece I'd bought in Paris during a business trip, and carried a small briefcase. When I walked into Le Bernardin's private dining room, the conversation stopped. My family sat around a beautifully set table. My parents, Emma and David, my grandparents, and a few close family friends. The same audience that had witnessed my humiliation was about to witness something very different. "Sarah!" Emma jumped up to hug me. "I can't believe you're here. This is the best birthday gift ever." My father's greeting was cooler. "Well, look who decided to rejoin the family. I hope you're ready to put this childish behavior behind you." "Oh, Dad," I said with a smile, "I'm ready to put a lot of things behind us." Dinner proceeded normally at first. The conversation flowed around Emma's career, David's recent promotion, my parents' planned vacation. I remained quiet, observing, waiting for the perfect moment. It came during dessert, when my father stood to make his traditional toast. "Another year celebrating our Emma," he began, raising his glass. 30 years of watching her grow into the successful, accomplished woman we always knew she'd become. He paused, glancing at me with barely concealed satisfaction at having successfully lured me back into the family fold. "And of course, we're so glad Sarah decided to join us tonight. It's never too late to learn from your sister's example and maybe finally make something of yourself." The table chuckled knowingly. Same old dad, same old jokes about his disappointing younger daughter. "Actually, Dad," I said, standing up with my briefcase, "I have a little announcement of my own." The room went quiet. I opened my briefcase and removed the first folder, placing it in front of my father. 6 months ago, at Emma's engagement party, you said that at least one of your daughters had finally made something of herself, and that we can't all be winners. I paused, letting the words hang in the air. I want you to read that article out loud to everyone. My father opened the folder and his face went white. The TechCrunch headline read, Microsoft acquires Dataflow in $20 million deal. Youngest female founder makes fortune in analytics revolution. I don't understand, he stammered. Read it, I said firmly, out loud. His hands shaking, my father began reading the article that detailed how I had built Dataflow from nothing into a $20 million acquisition, praising my innovative approach to business analytics and my vision for democratizing data insights. The room was dead silent except for his increasingly trembling voice. Now the second folder, I instructed. This one contained my Forbes 30 Under 30 feature, with my photo on the cover alongside other young innovators. The article described my transition from entrepreneur to venture capitalist, my role at Microsoft, and my growing influence in the tech world. By this point, my father couldn't continue reading. The papers fell from his hands as he stared at me in complete shock. The third folder is for everyone, I announced, distributing copies around the table. It contained my appointment letter as senior technology consultant at Microsoft, complete with my salary details and stock options, compensation that exceeded my father's lawyer salary by 400%. My mother was the first to speak, her voice barely a whisper. Sarah, when did this happen? The acquisition closed 3 days before Emma's engagement party, I said calmly. 3 days before Dad called me a loser in front of everyone in this room. Emma was staring at the documents in disbelief. You built a company? A $20 million company? While you thought I was just doing my computer thing, I confirmed. But I wasn't done. At that moment, the restaurant's maître d' approached our table. Excuse me, Miss Chen? Your guest has arrived. Perfect timing, I said. Everyone, I'd like you to meet Dr. Michael Reyes, VP of Technology Acquisition at Microsoft. A distinguished man in an expensive suit approached our table, extending his hand to my father. Mr. Chen, it's an honor to meet Sarah's family. Your daughter is one of the most brilliant minds I've worked with in my 20-year career. The Dataflow acquisition was a watershed moment for our analytics division. My father shook hands in stunned silence. Dr. Reyes continued. When Sarah told me she was having dinner with her family tonight, I insisted on stopping by to express Microsoft's gratitude personally. We're lucky to have her on our team. After Dr. Reyes left, the table remained in shocked silence. My father, the man who had spent my entire life making me feel small, looked utterly broken. Tears were streaming down his face. Sarah, he whispered, I had no idea. How could we not know? You didn't know because you never asked, I said simply. For 5 years, I tried to tell you about my work, my company, my dreams. Every time, you dismissed it as a hobby or changed the subject to talk about Emma's latest promotion. My mother was crying now, too. We're so sorry. We're so proud. We didn't understand. The computer thing you all mocked, it wasn't a thing. It was a calling. While you were worried about my future, I was building it. Emma, to her credit, was the first to stand up and hug me. I'm so sorry, Sarah. What Dad said at my engagement party was cruel, and I should have defended you. I'm proud to be your sister. But the most satisfying moment came when my father, this proud, successful lawyer, who had spent my entire life making me feel inadequate, broke down completely. Sarah, please, he sobbed. I'm so sorry. I was wrong about everything. I was wrong about you. Yes, I said quietly, you were. The months that followed were complicated. My parents went through what I can only describe as an identity crisis. Their entire worldview, their understanding of success, their assessment of their daughters, their role as parents, had been shattered in one evening. My father, in particular, struggled. He took leave from his law firm and entered therapy. I destroyed my relationship with my daughter because I was too arrogant to see her worth. He told the family therapist we eventually started seeing together. My mother became almost obsessively interested in my work, asking detailed questions about venture capital, technology trends, and my portfolio companies. It was touching, if a bit overwhelming. Emma and I rebuilt our relationship more easily. She was genuinely proud of my success and grateful that I'd forgiven her for not defending me at the engagement party. I was a coward, she admitted. I was so used to being the golden child that I forgot what it felt like to be attacked. The most meaningful change came gradually. My family stopped defining success by conventional markers, corporate titles, traditional career paths, social expectations, and started recognizing achievement in all its forms. When my father returned to work, he became an advocate for underestimated employees. When my mother met my portfolio company's founders, she listened with genuine interest rather than polite dismissal. One unexpected benefit of revealing my success was the opportunity to help Emma's career development in ways that hadn't been possible before. Her marketing role at the Boston startup was going well, but I could see areas where my experience might be valuable. Emma, I have a proposition for you, I said during one of her visits. There's a women's entrepreneurship conference in Silicon Valley next month. The speakers include some of the most successful female founders and investors in tech. Would you be interested in attending? That sounds amazing, she said immediately. But I probably can't afford the registration and travel costs on my current salary. My treat, I said. I think you'd learn a lot, and you'd meet people who could be valuable contacts as your career develops. Emma attended the conference and came back energized about the possibilities in tech entrepreneurship. She'd connected with several female founders who were building marketing-focused companies and had learned about emerging trends in digital marketing analytics. As word of my success spread through our extended family, relatives began approaching me with business ideas and investment opportunities. Some were legitimate, thoughtful proposals. Others were clearly attempts to access my wealth for questionable ventures. My cousin Jake pitched me his revolutionary app idea, basically Uber for dog walking, but without any technical knowledge or market research. My Aunt Sandra wanted funding for a boutique candle business in a market already oversaturated with artisanal candle makers. But a few proposals were genuinely intriguing. My Uncle Robert, a physician, had identified a significant inefficiency in hospital scheduling systems and had partnered with a software developer to create a solution. Their pilot program had shown promising results at 3 hospitals. I look for 3 things, I explained to my family during one of our monthly dinners. First, a significant problem that affects many people or businesses. Second, a solution that actually works and that customers are willing to pay for. Third, founders who have the technical skills and determination to execute their vision. Schedule Flow sounds like it meets all those criteria, my father said, having educated himself about venture capital since my revelation. It does, plus Robert has deep domain expertise in healthcare operations. He's not an outsider trying to guess what problems exist. He's lived these problems himself. I ended up investing $250,000 in Schedule Flow, which has since expanded to 30 hospitals across the region. As my venture capital work progressed, I found myself becoming an informal business education resource for my family. Emma asked questions about marketing strategy and customer acquisition. My parents wanted to understand technology trends and their implications for traditional industries. I think I understand now why you were always so interested in business metrics and data analysis, my father said during one of our conversations. When you're building a company, everything depends on understanding your customers and optimizing your operations. Exactly, I said. Business intuition is valuable, but data provides the objective foundation for making strategic decisions. Emma had started applying some of these principles at her startup. I'm using customer data to optimize our marketing campaigns, she told me. Instead of guessing which messages will resonate, I'm testing different approaches and measuring the results. That's smart, I said. What are you learning? That my initial assumptions about our target customers were partially wrong, she admitted. The data showed that different customer segments respond to different value propositions. I've been able to improve our conversion rates by 20% just by personalizing our messaging. My father's law firm had been struggling with inefficient client management and document organization systems. After watching me work with tech startups for several months, he approached me with unprecedented humility. I know legal services aren't tech startups, he said somewhat sheepishly. but we have a lot of the same challenges around data management and client communication that your portfolio companies face. Business problems are business problems, I said. The specific industry matters less than understanding the core inefficiencies and building systematic solutions. I spent several weeks analyzing their operations, interviewing partners and staff about their biggest frustrations, and researching software solutions designed for small law firms. The process reminded me of the early days of data flow, when I'd interviewed small business owners about their analytics challenges. Your main problems are client intake, document version control, and billing accuracy, I concluded after my analysis. All of these have proven software solutions, but you'll need to invest time in training staff and changing established workflows. The recommendations I made weren't revolutionary, mostly implementing existing practice management software and establishing better data organization protocols. But the systematic approach to identifying and solving business problems was new to the firm. I feel stupid that we've been struggling with these issues for years without approaching them strategically, my father admitted. It's not about intelligence, I said. It's about having frameworks for analyzing business problems. Most people are too close to their daily operations to see inefficiencies clearly. As my reputation in the venture capital world grew, I found myself evaluating increasingly sophisticated investment opportunities. The $20 million from the Microsoft acquisition had given me the capital to make substantial investments, but more importantly, my experience building data flow gave me credibility with entrepreneurs. One of my most successful investments came through an unexpected connection. At a Stanford alumni event, I met Jennifer Kim, a former Google engineer who had identified a massive inefficiency in supply chain management for e-commerce companies. Small online retailers are losing millions because they can't predict demand accurately, Jennifer explained over coffee. They either overstock and tie up cash in inventory, or understock and lose sales. We've built an AI system that analyzes dozens of variables to optimize inventory levels. Her prototype was impressive, but what sold me was her approach to the problem. Like me with data flow, she had identified a real pain point that affected thousands of businesses and built a solution that customers were eager to pay for. I invested $500,000 in Jennifer's company, Inventory IQ, which has since grown to serve over 2,000 e-commerce retailers and is preparing for a Series B round that values the company at $50 million. Another significant investment came through my Microsoft connections. Dr. Reyes introduced me to a team of former NASA engineers who were applying satellite technology to agricultural monitoring. Their system could predict crop yields, identify pest infestations, and optimize irrigation, potentially revolutionizing farming efficiency. Agriculture is the last major industry that hasn't been fully digitized, explained Dr. Maria Santos, the company's CEO. We're not just building software, we're helping farmers feed the world more efficiently. AgriVision received $750,000 from my fund and has since expanded to monitor over 100,000 acres across 12 states. Word of my success eventually spread beyond my immediate family to our extended relatives, creating a ripple effect of shock and recalculation that was both amusing and touching. My Aunt Lisa, who had spent years subtly suggesting that I needed to think practically about my career, called my mother in tears after seeing my Forbes profile online. "I can't believe I told Sarah she should consider going back to school for accounting," she confessed to my mother. "I thought she was wasting her time with computers." My Uncle David, a traditional banker who had always been skeptical of technology, suddenly became fascinated by fintech startups and began asking me detailed questions about blockchain and cryptocurrency during family gatherings. But the most significant change came from my grandmother, who was 89 and had always been quietly supportive of my interests, even when others dismissed them. "I knew you were special," she told me during a private moment at a family dinner. "When you were 8 years old, you spent an entire afternoon teaching me how to use email because you said it would help me stay connected with my friends. Most children that age don't think about solving other people's problems." Her words meant more to me than any business accolade. The family dynamics had shifted so dramatically that I sometimes felt overwhelmed by the sudden attention and respect. Relatives who had barely acknowledged my career for years were now asking for investment advice and business consultations. It's interesting, Emma observed during one of our weekly dinners, how quickly everyone's attitude changed once they understood the numbers. It makes you wonder what other talents we miss because we don't recognize the value. 1 year after the restaurant revelation, I decided to formalize my commitment to supporting underestimated entrepreneurs. Using a portion of my Microsoft windfall, I established the Sarah Chen Foundation for Emerging Technology Entrepreneurs. The foundation's mission was simple: identify brilliant founders who were being overlooked by traditional venture capital because they didn't fit conventional patterns: women, minorities, first-generation college students, people from non-traditional backgrounds. Our first recipient was Marcus Johnson, a 22-year-old former community college student who had built a revolutionary app for managing chronic illnesses. Despite having 10,000 active users and strong revenue growth, Marcus had been rejected by 17 venture capital firms. They kept asking about my business school experience and my network, Marcus explained during our first meeting. When I told them I learned programming online and built my user base through community health centers, they'd lose interest. The foundation provided Marcus with $100,000 in funding and, more importantly, mentorship from experienced entrepreneurs who understood his challenges. Within 18 months, his company was acquired by a major healthcare technology firm for $8 million. My family's reaction to the foundation was particularly gratifying. My father, who had spent years dismissing my computer hobby, volunteered to provide pro bono legal services for foundation recipients. "I want to help," he said simply. "I've spent too many years not recognizing potential. Maybe I can prevent other people from making my mistakes." Perhaps the most rewarding aspect of the entire experience was watching Emma's career transformation. The Women's Entrepreneurship Conference I'd sent her to had opened her eyes to possibilities she'd never considered. "I realized I've been thinking too small," she told me 6 months after the conference. "I was so focused on climbing someone else's ladder that I never considered building my own." Emma had identified a significant problem in her industry. Marketing agencies struggled to measure the long-term impact of their campaigns because they lacked tools to track customer lifetime value across multiple touchpoints. Working nights and weekends, she had developed a prototype solution and begun testing it with her colleagues. The initial results were promising enough that several agencies had expressed interest in paying for a full version. "I want to ask you something," Emma said during one of our dinners, "and I need you to be completely honest. Do you think I have what it takes to build a real company?" Looking at my sister, who had spent months learning to code, researching market opportunities, and developing a business model, I saw someone completely different from the conventional marketing executive she'd been a year earlier. "Emma, you've already proven you have what it takes," I said. "The question isn't whether you can build a company. It's whether you're ready to bet on yourself." 3 months later, I became Emma's first investor, providing $50,000 in seed funding for her startup, Marketing Metrics. She was my best investment decision yet. The changes in my family extended beyond career and financial matters. We had learned to communicate more honestly, listen more carefully, and recognize achievement in all its forms. My parents' marriage had actually strengthened through the process of confronting their mistakes. The family therapy sessions had forced them to examine not just their relationship with me, but their communication patterns with each other. We realized we'd been making assumptions about everyone, not just Sarah, my mother explained. We stopped really listening to each other years ago. My father had become genuinely interested in technology and innovation. He'd started attending startup events in the city, not as an investor, but as someone trying to understand an industry he'd dismissed for too long. "Every founder I meet reminds me of Sarah," he told me. "Smart, passionate people with big ideas that established industries don't take seriously." I was part of that establishment mindset. The transformation extended to how they supported other family members. When my cousin Jake expressed interest in starting his own business, a legitimate one this time, sustainable packaging for restaurants, my parents encouraged him rather than pushing him toward a stable corporate job. When my teenage niece announced she wanted to study computer science, my mother's response was immediate enthusiasm rather than concerns about it being too technical for a girl. As my profile in the tech industry grew, I began connecting with other entrepreneurs who had similar stories of family transformation. At a conference panel on breaking barriers in tech, I met three other founders who had faced comparable challenges with family expectations. David Chen, no relation, despite the name, had built a $30 million logistics company while his traditional Chinese parents insisted he become a doctor. Maria Rodriguez had created a revolutionary educational platform while her family questioned why she was wasting time on computer games instead of becoming a teacher. James Wright had sold his cybersecurity startup for $15 million, while his blue-collar family wondered why he couldn't just get a real job at the local factory. There's something powerful about proving family wrong, David observed during our panel discussion. But the real satisfaction comes when they finally understand what you've been trying to tell them all along. We started meeting monthly, sharing strategies for managing family relationships while building unconventional careers. The group became both a support system and a business network as we began collaborating on investments and mentorship opportunities. Our informal gatherings eventually evolved into the Second Generation Entrepreneurs Group, which now includes over 200 founders who have navigated similar family dynamics. 2 years after the Microsoft acquisition, I was invited to speak at my old high school's career day. Walking through the hallways where I'd once felt like an outsider, I was struck by how many students seemed to be hiding their real interests to fit in with peer expectations. During my presentation, I noticed a quiet girl in the back row who was taking detailed notes. After my talk, she approached me nervously. "Miss Chen, I've been building websites for local businesses, but my guidance counselor says I should focus on more practical subjects. My parents think programming is just a hobby." Her story was so familiar, it was almost painful. I gave her my card and told her to email me. That conversation led to the creation of the Young Innovators Mentorship Program, which connects high school students interested in technology with successful entrepreneurs. We now serve over 500 students annually, helping them develop both technical skills and the confidence to pursue unconventional paths. Many of our mentees have gone on to start their own companies or land internships at major tech firms. But the real success stories are the ones who simply learn to value their own interests and abilities, regardless of whether others understood them. "You saved my daughter's confidence," one parent told me at our annual showcase event. She was starting to believe she wasn't smart because her interests didn't match traditional expectations. The ultimate validation came 3 years after my restaurant revelation, when Microsoft invited me to deliver the keynote address at their annual Technology Innovation Summit. The audience included 3,000 entrepreneurs, investors, and industry leaders from around the world. My parents, Emma, and even some of our extended family flew to Seattle for the event. Watching them in the front row as I discussed the future of business analytics and the democratization of data insights, I was struck by how completely our relationship had transformed. After my presentation, my father approached me with tears in his eyes. "Sarah, I want you to know something," he said. "Today, listening to you speak to all those accomplished people, I realize that you're not just successful. You're a leader. You're changing how people think about technology and business. I'm not just proud of what you've achieved, I'm proud of who you've become." Coming from the man who had once called me a loser in front of our entire family, those words represented the complete healing of our relationship. But the most meaningful moment came when a young woman approached me after the event. "Miss, I heard about your story through the mentorship program," she said. "My family doesn't understand my app development work either. But listening to you today gave me the courage to keep going. Thank you for showing me that being misunderstood doesn't mean being wrong." As I write this story, 5 years have passed since that humiliating engagement party, and 4 years since the restaurant revelation that changed everything. My relationship with my family has evolved from dysfunction to genuine mutual respect and support. The financial success was gratifying, but the real transformation was deeper than money. We learned to recognize different types of intelligence, to value diverse paths to success, and to communicate with curiosity rather than judgment. My venture capital fund now manages over $50 million dollars and has invested in 37 companies. Emma's startup has grown to 15 employees and just closed a Series A round. My father's law firm has become one of the most technologically advanced practices in the region. But perhaps the most significant change is in how we handle conflict and misunderstanding within the family. Instead of dismissing what we don't immediately comprehend, we ask questions. Instead of assuming we know what's best for each other, we listen to individual goals and dreams. The foundation has supported 43 entrepreneurs with a success rate that rivals traditional venture capital. The mentorship program has expanded to 12 cities. And most importantly, I've learned that the best revenge against being underestimated isn't proving people wrong. It's helping them learn to recognize potential they previously couldn't see. If there's one thing I want people to take from my story, it's that family relationships can be healed even after profound hurt and misunderstanding. But healing requires several things. First, acknowledgement. My parents had to genuinely recognize and admit their mistakes, not just apologize for my hurt feelings. There's a difference between "I'm sorry you feel bad" and "I was wrong about you." Second, changed behavior. Apologies without behavioral change are just words. My family had to demonstrate their transformation through consistent actions over time. Third, patience. I had to accept that people can change, even when their previous behavior has been deeply hurtful. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, but it does mean creating space for growth. Fourth, boundaries. I had to learn to protect my emotional well-being while still remaining open to relationship repair. The 6 months of no contact wasn't punishment. It was necessary space for me to process and for them to reflect. Finally, perspective. The success that vindicated me professionally also taught me that external validation, while satisfying, isn't the source of self-worth. My value as a person never depended on my family's recognition of my achievements. Today, my family is genuinely proud of my accomplishments, but more importantly, they understand the person I am and the values that drive me. When I tell them about a new investment or mentorship opportunity, they ask thoughtful questions and offer meaningful support. My father has become one of my most trusted advisors, bringing his legal expertise to bear on complex business problems. My mother serves on the board of the foundation, contributing her organizational skills and passion for education. Emma and I are not just sisters, but business partners and closest friends. The money from the Microsoft acquisition was life-changing, but the family reconciliation was life-defining. I learned that holding on to resentment hurts me more than it hurts others. But I also learned that standing up for myself was necessary for everyone's growth. To anyone listening who feels underestimated by their family, remember this: your worth isn't determined by other people's understanding of your potential. But sometimes when you're strong enough and successful enough, you can help the people you love learn to see more clearly. The sweetest revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's helping them become right about what really matters. My family called me worthless. Then I revealed my $20 million empire. But the real victory wasn't the money. It was watching them learn to see success in places they'd never thought to look, and knowing that this lesson would help them support and understand ambitious people for the rest of their lives. What's your story of being underestimated? Have you ever had to show family or friends that their assumptions about your potential were wrong? Share your experience in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of ultimate revenge and unexpected triumph. If you're currently struggling with family members who don't understand your dreams, remember, validation from others is wonderful, but self-belief is essential. Keep building, keep creating, keep proving to yourself that your vision matters. And if you're a parent or family member listening to this, ask yourself, whose potential might you be overlooking? Whose dreams might you be dismissing because they don't match your expectations? Remember, Your worth is never determined by other people's understanding of your achievements, but sometimes sharing your success can help the people you love learn to recognize greatness in all its forms. Thank you for joining me on this journey. And remember, sometimes the best way to prove someone wrong is to help them learn to be right about what truly matters.